Minimizing unwanted effects is something everyone strives for. That's why microdosing is so effective, because you derive the maximum benefit from taking the minimum effective dose. People microdose for many different reasons: for relaxation, to gain control of their mental health, wellness, performance, and recovery. I use microdose for stress relief and to help with sleep. Today's podcast is sponsored by Microdose Gummies and Lumi Labs. Microdose gummies deliver perfect, entry-level doses of THC that help you feel just the right amount of good. I love this company and personally use their products. The gummies are organic, infused with real fruit, vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and they taste good. Microdose is available nationwide. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com and use code BEYOND to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. Links can be found in the show description. But again, that's microdose.com and code BEYOND.
This podcast contains adult themes and graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
A commercial-free version of this podcast is available on Patreon for $1 per month. Patreon.com/Beyond Contempt podcast. I'm Renee, and this is Beyond Contempt True Crime. For this episode's case, we're going to head back to Wisconsin and revisit a kidnapping case that received national attention. This case is very much like the more recent Jamie Klaus case. You're listening to episode 86, Jessyca Mullenberg. Jessyca Mullenberg first met Stephen Oliver in 1989 when she was in elementary school, and he was a teacher's aide at Altoona's Peterson Elementary School in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. He was the father of one of her classmates, and he, innocently enough, started a writing club for students. Jessica's parents divorced, and she moved to Stephen's Point with her mother in 1993. Stephen Oliver showed up with a son and enrolled him in the same school as Jessyca. Jessica's mother, Monica, did not like Stephen Oliver's interest in her daughter, and she confronted him that fall. She told him in no uncertain terms to stay away from her daughter. Monica contacted a lawyer and even called the police to see if there was anything she could do to prevent Stephen Oliver from having contact with Jessyca. They told her that there was nothing she could do unless something illegal happened. After being confronted, Stephen Oliver moved back to Eau Claire, where Jessica's father, Dale, still lived. Stephen Oliver moved into the Cozy Acres mobile village and had a trailer across from Jessica's father. He was determined to keep tabs on Jessyca. 13-year-old Jessyca was visiting her father in Eau Claire and told her father that she was headed to the library. His neighbor, Stephen Oliver, was going to help her with a book project at the library. Stephen Oliver convinced Jessyca that a Random House publisher was interested in one of her short stories, and they needed to go to Madison, Wisconsin to meet the publisher. On Saturday, September 16, 1995, 38-year-old Stephen Oliver picked up Jessyca around 6:30 a.m. and promised her father that he would have her back by 9 or 10 p.m. that night. As Jessyca rode in the car, she fell asleep. When she woke up, her hands and feet were restrained. Oliver told Jessyca that he was taking her and there was nothing she could do to stop it. And she couldn't stop it, as her hands were tied behind her back. There were ropes draped over her legs that were secured under the seat. After 8 hours in the car, they arrived in Kansas City, Missouri. Oliver held a knife to Jessica's back as they boarded a plane to Houston, Texas. The next day, on September 17, 1995, Dale Mullenberg called his ex-wife Monica and told her Jessyca was missing. He was convinced that Jessyca ran away from home. but Monica pressed him about who their daughter had been with the day before. Dale said that she had been with his neighbor, Stephen Oliver. Monica let out a very loud scream. She had been suspicious of Jessyca's so-called creative writing mentor for a long time, and she was certain he had taken her. Monica had even warned Dale and his wife to keep Jessyca away from him. Dale Mullenberg received a letter in the mail on Monday, which was postmarked on the Saturday of Jessyca's abduction. It said that Stephen Oliver dropped Jessyca off at her father's Saturday night, and she went to stay at a friend's house. The reality was, Oliver had been planning this for some time. He had been selling off furniture, claiming that he was moving to Detroit for a job. Oliver had his ex-wife move into his trailer and take custody of their 13-year-old son. The first thing Oliver did in Houston was check into a Best Western motel, and he changed Jessyca's appearance. He cut her hair and changed her hair color from blonde to brown. Oliver abruptly decided that they needed to move locations, as he didn't feel safe in the motel. He freaked out after he saw a car with a license plate from the Midwest. Oliver and Jessyca registered at a Days Inn near the Houston airport as father and daughter. Oliver said his name was David Johnson and said he was from Chicago, Illinois. He told Jessyca that she would now go by the name Cindy Johnson, and she was to call him Dad. Oliver told the hotel workers that his daughter looked sad because her mother and twin brother were killed in a car wreck. To make money while on the run, Oliver became a painter and a maintenance worker for the motel. He mainly worked for his lodging and also received smaller paychecks. He cashed the checks at the motel's registration desk and received rides from the motel shuttle bus drivers. At the beginning of each day, Oliver would check the parking lot for Midwestern license plates, and after this check, he locked Jessyca in a room and went to work. Jessyca endured abuse every day. She was hit and raped. If she didn't perform a sexual act a certain way, she would be tied to the bed the entire day. Food was a privilege that she had to earn. Oliver constantly threatened Jessyca. He said he would kill her parents and siblings if she ever said a word. The room phone was disconnected, so there was no way she could communicate with the outside world. After a few weeks, Oliver had Jessyca so brainwashed that she thought her parents didn't love her or want her back. The memories of her past quickly slipped away. After a month of this manipulation, Jessyca forgot her real name. And if she didn't precisely do as Oliver had asked, it wasn't like she was hit just one time. It would be 20 times with an object like a pot, chair, or broom. When they left the hotel room, he'd have a knife in her back. The situation was bleak. Meanwhile, everyone was searching for Jessyca Mullenberg. The FBI had a hard time finding leads. Law enforcement passed out photos of Stephen Oliver and Jessyca all over the United States. They even put photos on the side of trucks. Out of desperation, investigators visited psychics a few times. Stephen Oliver's car was eventually found in a parking garage at the Kansas City airport. FBI agent Jerry Southworth wanted to get Jessyca's case on America's Most Wanted. He had to go through the FBI headquarters in D.C. and wait his turn to get the case on the show, since there was a massive backlog. But one of his friends at the FBI had a daughter who worked on the show, and she bumped the case to the front of the line. Unfortunately, the show aired, and the FBI only received a couple of calls, and those tips never panned out. America's Most Wanted played a rerun of Jessyca's case, and that led to a tip from someone who had seen Stephen Oliver and Jessyca Mullenberg looking like a father and daughter. That tip came from the motel's restaurant manager, who suspected Oliver was up to something untoward. She actually reached out to social services in Houston a few weeks prior, but they never returned her call. The restaurant manager called into America's Most Wanted tip line and spoke with the FBI. She told them about Oliver and his homeschooled daughter, who was never allowed out alone. After 105 days of being abducted, the FBI raided the Houston motel room at midnight on December 29, 1995. Monica received a call from FBI agent Southworth, who worked out of the office in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. He said, "We got her." This was one of the top 5 cases of his 28-year-long career with the FBI. Southworth said, "You don't get to do many things in this line of work where you get to feel good about what you did, and everybody else feels good about it too. The only one who didn't feel good about it was Oliver." When the FBI agent spoke with Jessyca, she tried to tell him that her name was Cindy. She had been so brainwashed that she insisted Oliver was her father. So they showed her pictures from her past, and it helped when she heard her mother's voice when they were reunited at the airport. Monica remembered that prior to the kidnapping, her daughter had been extremely tan. When she was reunited with Jessyca, she was pale from all her time spent indoors. The FBI took evidence from Oliver's room, including stained bedsheets and various pieces of clothing, which they sent to headquarters for testing. The FBI was happy that they found Jessyca when they did, because they believed Oliver was getting ready to leave her and likely kill her. He had grown tired of Jessyca as she was aging and started to not look like a little girl. Stephen Oliver graduated from Eau Claire Memorial High School in 1976. He helped with clerical work and tutored children in classes in study hall. Oliver was enrolled as an education major on and off for 15 years at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. He worked for radio stations as a DJ and sold specialty advertising. A parent once complained because Oliver was videotaping young girls outside of the school, but no charges were ever filed. He seemed to live in a delusion even after his arrest. In a letter to his son, Stephen Oliver said that Jessyca controlled his life, and they had split duties, much like a husband and wife. On January 31st, 1996, they charged Stephen Oliver in federal court with 14 counts of wire fraud. He posted messages on the internet about having a computer for sale. Oliver then accepted deposits and down payments from prospective buyers for the computer that never really existed. Oliver took a plea deal for those charges. Stephen Oliver received a second indictment that stated he enticed Jessyca Mullenberg and held her for companionship and his own sexual gratification, and took a minor over state lines with the intent to engage in sexual activity. This is also known as the Mann Act, which criminalizes the transportation of any woman or girl for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery, or any sexual activity for which a person can be charged with a criminal offense. He pleaded not guilty to these charges. The trial began in June 1996. The prosecution called many witnesses, including Jessyca, Jessica's mother Monica, a witness from the motel in Texas, and 2 expert witnesses. Famous Wisconsin prosecutor Peggy Lautenschlager said that Oliver was obsessed with Jessyca for years. Defense attorney David Geyer said Jessyca willingly left home because she liked Stephen Oliver and wanted to get away from her mother. When Jessyca testified, she was soft-spoken and often looked down. She answered questions about the sexual contact she had in the motel and stated Oliver made her have sexual contact or intercourse almost every day of the kidnapping. When he was upset with her, he would tie her arms up with a necktie, and he would touch her. Oliver made her practice saying that he never touched her in case people found them. Normally, a minor who was the victim of a sexual assault would not have their name plastered in every newspaper across the nation. But Jessyca's name and picture were already out in the open prior to Stephen Oliver being charged because of the trajectory of her national case. Jessyca cried on the stand when she said that there were rumors at school, and she lost friends because of the publicity of her life. In interviews with investigators, Oliver frequently asked about Jessyca. He wanted to give her a hug and kiss goodbye because he loved her. Jessyca never asked investigators about Oliver or wanted to see him after his arrest. The DNA testing of Jessica's underwear from the motel room was found with semen, which was confirmed to belong to Stephen Oliver. It corroborated her statements about the abuse. Oliver claimed the DNA stains on the victim's underwear were not a result of intercourse. The jury deliberated 4 hours and 40 minutes. They convicted Oliver on felony kidnapping and transporting a minor across state lines for immoral purposes. They sentenced him to 480 months, or 40 years without parole for the kidnapping, and he received 120 months or 10 years for the Mann Act, which would run concurrently. The prosecutor said Oliver refused to take responsibility for his actions. Oliver said, "I'm not a pedophile. I'm not a child molester. I'm not some kind of fruitcake." When Jessyca returned home after her abduction, they gave her a warm welcome. She was tutored to get caught up in school, and there were even purple ribbons all over town. That warm welcome quickly soured, and classmates bullied her because some felt like she received special treatment because of all the school she missed due to receiving therapy, and also her time away for Stephen Oliver's court trial. She was teased, taunted, and even pushed downstairs by her peers. Some people said she wanted to be with Oliver because she didn't call her parents or try to escape during the kidnapping. Jessyca withdrew from the social aspects of her life. At age 14, she went to class, worked at her job, and played sports. Nothing more, nothing less. At lunch, she sat in the art room to eat by herself. Jessyca graduated top of her class in both high school and college. She graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Stout with honors and majored in psychology and minored in criminal justice and sociology. Jessyca also took part in many sports, including basketball, volleyball, soccer, softball, and track. After college, Jessyca had 3 jobs and worked at her mom's in-home daycare, worked at McDonald's, and she also taught a water aerobics class. Jessyca got married in 2009. She took the last name of her husband, Kurt, and now goes by Jessyca Christensen. She and her husband have 2 children, one son named Preston and one daughter named Piper. She was lucky that she was able to have children, as doctors told her that she only had a 3 to 5% chance of conceiving after all the sexual assault she endured. Jessyca's pregnancies were more on the difficult side, and she was often not feeling well during those time periods. Jessyca's mother calls the grandchildren miracles, as it was the important thing that Stephen Oliver wasn't able to take from her daughter. Jessyca is very protective of her kids. One day, her 5-year-old daughter did not get off the bus in the afternoon. The bus driver said that the girl never boarded the bus that day. Jessyca had an epic breakdown, but it turned out that it was a miscommunication, and her daughter stayed after school for a Halloween event. Given all the trauma she experienced, Jessyca takes additional precautions to protect her children against anyone who might want to harm them. She's especially vigilant on anniversaries, like September 16th and December 29th, which were the days of her abduction and recovery. Both her kids stayed together in the same room when they were younger. But once they moved into their own bedrooms, Jessyca gave up her primary bedroom because she didn't want Piper to have a room on the lower level of the house, which has ground-level windows. When her kids started kindergarten, Jessyca instructed other parents to not write their children's names on their backpacks. She never lets her kids play outside unattended and meets them at the school bus stop. Jessyca worries about the day when her kids will want to have sleepovers, as this triggers the trust issue she has. She also runs drills with her kids and quizzes them to ensure that they know their full addresses and phone numbers. Decades later, Jessyca Mullenberg is in her 40s, and she still deals with trauma from the kidnapping. She has post-traumatic stress disorder and jaw issues. She had 13 jaw surgeries because Stephen Oliver had hit her face so many times during the kidnapping. Jessyca does not like to fly, and she won't stay at a Best Western or Days Inn, as she associates it with her abduction. She likes to keep her life busy between family, work, art, athletics, and the kids. This busy life is by design. It helps her forget about the past until she crawls into bed. The sexual abuse during the abduction was traumatic. However, Jessyca had been subjected to this type of abuse well before the crime. When Jessyca was younger, Oliver would invite all the neighborhood kids to his home, since he had a son around the same age. He would sexually abuse Jessyca by saying she misbehaved, and then he'd send her to the kitchen. Oliver would force both oral sex and intercourse on her. He would psychologically abuse Jessyca by calling her stupid or ugly. Oliver threatened that if she ever told anyone, he would harm her family. Once she resisted his advances, and he stabbed her in the stomach. Only the tip of the knife pierced her skin, but she bled a lot. Oliver did not take her to receive medical treatment and told her to bandage herself. Jessyca had also been molested when she was 5 by the father of one of her dad's girlfriends, and also by her father's roommate. After she testified in court for the Stephen Oliver trial, she reported the other sexual abusers as well, and they were all eventually convicted. Jessyca went to school for a year and a half because she wanted to become a school liaison officer to keep the kids safe. When she took a test for employment, she didn't pass because it showed she had PTSD. Jessyca does some public speaking and shares her story to help families whose children have gone missing. She wants to raise awareness about the ways parents can help prevent their kids from being kidnapped. Jessyca has done interviews with people in Cosmo magazines and has been on the Good Morning America show, Dr. Phil, Montel Williams, and the E! Entertainment Network. Jessyca received the Fields Family Foundation Courage Award at the 2008 Hope Awards, put on by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She is doing as well as expected, given what she has endured. In a jailhouse interview, Stephen Oliver said, "Hopefully they'll murder me right away. Can you imagine going to prison for the rest of your life?" Stephen Oliver has had to imagine going to prison for the rest of his life as he remains in federal prison, and his 40-year sentence runs until 2046. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Beyond Contempt. Please visit BeyondContemptPodcast.com for the links to the sources and music used in this episode. Research, writing, editing, audio production, and sound design were performed by me, Renee. If you like the show, please leave me a positive review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you so much, everyone.